Q&A session now, and we've had lots of good questions on the chat function through WebEx. So if you want to keep them coming, I'm getting them in live, real time, ready to put to Richard and Gemma. So the first question from me. We're a Portsmouth-based manufacturer of hydrogen and carbon capture technologies. However, we are no longer an SME as a group. Are we still able to engage with the project? Can I hand that one over to you, Richard?
I'm afraid not. If you are not an SME, then you will not be eligible. Sometimes we've been able to work with companies that have been spinned out of larger groups, but they do have to be set up as an independent legal entity in the UK. Worth having a conversation though, because there may be something to do on the student projects or something like that. But for the grant funding, no, it wouldn't be eligible.
Okay, great. Thank you, Richard. And the next question from the audience is from Nathan Brown. Can R&D innovation grants be spent on capital items?
Absolutely, yes, we'd encourage it. Obviously, some of the R&D is there to bring in the expertise, but if you need to purchase capital equipment to take it forward, then and if it's in the project and it's eligible expenditure, then absolutely, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Next question is from Chris Bramall. He's asked, what sort of timescale do you anticipate from expression of interest to funding agreement?
Chris, how long is a piece of string? From the initial meeting with ourselves, getting all the applications that need to be filled in for ERDF compliance, etc., that normally takes 2 to 3 weeks. We can then, once the project is scoped and procurement secured, then we put you in front of a panel. I would say that it takes about 6 weeks to get full agreement on it as a rough ballpark figure, and Matt can probably contradict me there, but I think the last panel we had 2 companies and they probably spent 6 to 7 weeks getting ready for the panel. When they actually get the money now is obviously down to them as to how quickly they can spend it, because we can only release the 36% when we've received their invoices. There is, unfortunately, because it's ERDF, there is a certain amount of bureaucracy and admin to go through, but I have to say that Matt is excellent at keeping companies on track and helping them through that process. So we're there the whole step of the way to make sure that you're not sort of left thinking, how do I fill this in, etc. I hope that answers your question, Chris.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Richard. Gemma, is there anything you'd like to add on that one? Or if you want me to move on to the next question?
I suppose my contribution to that answer would be that it's a conversation going forward, and with regards to timelines that SMEs are facing as well, that we're very interested in working with you in your timescales wherever possible, and in light of COVID-19 as well. We understand that, you know, this is uncertain times for everyone, so very much a conversation that we're very keen to have to make it happen at a time scale that the SMEs are needing to follow. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Gemma. My next question is from Rory Maxwell. He's asked, will UK government funding be available to replace the ERDF funding post-transition from the EU?
That's a good question, Rory. The funding is already in place for clean growth, as you'll have seen from Innovate UK calls and stuff that the Knowledge Transfer Network are putting out there. How they replace ERDF, I'm not too sure. There is something that's supposed to replace it, but for the life of me, I can't remember what it's called. But there is lots of other funding opportunities there. So clean growth is one of the 4 pillars of the industrial strategy from the UK government. So it's not going to go away. If we want to get to zero carbon by 2050 or sooner, then they are going to have to fund SMEs developing clean growth innovations, because that's where all the great ideas come from.
Richard, should we also say at this point that this project is secure regardless of Brexit, and it is running up until, at the moment, off the top of my head, October 2022, and we are guaranteed for the span of our project timeline regardless of Brexit happening, which is great.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, thanks both. Another question is from Michael Shields. He's asked, are the low carbon Solent grants separate from Emphasise energy efficiency grants, or has there been an amalgamation of the two schemes? I'll pass over to Richard for that one first.
Yeah, we are under Emphasise running energy efficiency grants as well. So again, very similar to the research and development grants. There's up to £25,000 funded at 36% of eligible cost to install energy saving kits such as LED lighting, solar panels, whatever basically is going to reduce your energy cost. At this moment in time, there's some discussion as to whether we'll be able to do the same thing under low carbon Solent. But whether or not we do, there is plenty of money left in the Emphasise project for that. So please get those expressions of interest in, and Matt and I will be absolutely delighted to speak to you about that. Both Emphasise and Low Carbon Solent are running the research and development grants. Both of them are exactly the same. You could apply for one under Emphasise, and as long as you've got a separate project that's totally different to the other one, or not the same as the other one, then you could in theory apply for both. So I think actually we spoke to a company yesterday that will probably be going for Emphasise R&D, Low Carbon Solent R&D, and the Emphasise Energy Efficiency Grant. So in theory they could get up to £75,000. They do of course have to find the 64% match for each of those, but yes, very flexible.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Richard. Gemma, is there anything you want to add for that one, or shall I move on?
Just to make the point that they are two separate ERDF funded projects, but as Richard says, you know, lots of crossover for SMEs to engage with both. Yes, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Really important question from Chris Bramall next. Any limitations on what can be used as match funding, especially thinking of time spent by the SME? Can I pass that to you, Richard?
Yeah, you're not going to like this, Chris. You can't use any of your staff time towards it. We have tried this in the past, and you'll probably remember previous projects where it just got so complicated, it just wasn't worth doing so. No, it will be to purchase external advice, external support, external testing, equipment, capital, etc. But you can't use it on existing staff time. Sorry about that.
Okay, and the final question that I've got, so if anyone else has any questions, please can you pop them on the chat as soon as possible. It's a note from Jonathan just saying that he's heard that this type of grant has been counterproductive in other areas of the country. I'm guessing waiting to start a project until a grant might be agreed has been a waste of time and resulted in greater costs for some. Richard, can you talk a bit around why this won't be the case for Low Carbon Solent, and what kind of processes we've put in place to mitigate that?
Yeah, I mean, these grants are funded by taxpayers, so we do have to go through processes. So yes, there is effort, there is work involved, there are timescales, there's some quite frustrating bureaucracy at times. Matt has already run through some of the state aid guidelines and procurement guidelines. They do have to be followed, but to be honest, if you're going for any tender from any other organisation or any other kind of contract, you're going to have to go through very, very similar processes. I would have to say that any work you do in the applying for a Low Carbon Solent or Emphasise project will stand you in good stead for everything else, because not only will you be able to sharpen, make clear your project ideas, but you'll also get some seriously good advice from some of our academics and from some of our innovation advisors. So there's lots of benefits to come from that. We're taking away a lot of the pain from the admin and the bureaucracy. The only thing I would say is you do need to be careful with research and development tax refunds, because sometimes that can go against you. So you do need to do a little bit of research about what is involved and what you're going for. But we have got an experienced team. We've got access to other experienced people as well. So I'd like to think that we could guide every company through the process. And so far, we've done quite a lot of that. And some companies have succeeded, some have failed. We've had no complaints. Those that have failed, actually, not 2 hours ago, one that failed with the grant has now come back for a student postgraduate project to sharpen up their offer and what they're trying to achieve. So I'm fairly confident that we can guide everybody through the process without too much pain.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for outlining that, Richard. And the next question, another great one from Matthew Thompson, is do you have to be based within the Solent LEP area to access the project?
No.
Short and sweet, I like it, thank you. So ERDF funding is eligible for all SMEs in England.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we would like to work closely with the Solent LEP and the referrals that they get, and the companies that we're working with locally will be our priority. But if you're outside the Solent area and as a business person, I've never liked postcode lottery, so we're happy to talk to anybody, but I would have to say our aim is that the majority will be local business.
Great, thanks, Richard. Is there anything you want to add on that, Gemma?
No, thanks. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. A really good question from Pete Beckett here is, what development areas do the postgraduate student expertise cover?
Do you want to take that, Gemma? No.
Well, I can add something if that's helpful, Richard. I think we're investigating at the moment with regards to the university's plan going forward with regards to how the students are going to be active in their studies. But we have many postgraduate students at the university studying a really diverse spectrum of disciplines, from, you know, lots of different engineering topics, business, marketing, a lot of courses within business and law, in particular, the Faculty of Business and Law. So it's very much work in progress that we're investigating further at the moment. And we're interested to hear from SMEs what kind of support would be useful at this time. So can't give you a definitive answer at the moment, but we'd encourage you to stay engaged with us, and as plans evolve, we will be communicating those. But sorry, at the moment there isn't a definitive answer.
Richard, have you got anything to add?
No, I think it all depends when we can get facilities open at the university. So I would hope that we will be doing some of the engineering projects, but looking at some of the projects that companies have come to us with at the moment, some of it seems to be related to renewable energy, especially hydrogen, engineering, as Gemma has mentioned. Artificial intelligence is another one. So, but I think it's just watch and see when the university reopens and which bits open first.
Okay, great. Both for that. And the next question is Creamer, and he asks, if our R&D project requires substantially more funding than the £70,000 ceiling that relates to the 25k 36% grant on offer, are we permitted to apply for this funding, given that we might secure grant funding from other sources? And I'll hand that one over to you, Richard.
Right, let me just get this. Yeah, I didn't fully understand the question, actually. Let me just read it.
So,
yeah, I mean, we can, because this is European Regional Development Funding, it can, might be matched with Innovate UK or any other UK funding. It can't be matched with any other European funding. So if, for example, you had a project of, I don't know, 150,000, you could do 25 from us, money from Innovate UK. At some stage, you will need to put some of your own funding in there, because obviously you will be the main, hopefully you'll be the main beneficiary when your project reaches the market. So I think what we would say on that is come to us with your specific request, and we'll go through and tell you what's eligible, what's not eligible. Because we can match European with UK, there is a bit more flexibility than some projects. Hope that makes sense.
Yes, thank you, Richard. The final question I've got here, so again, we've got 9 more minutes left of this session, so any final questions, if you could just get them in the chat. is from Kim Pellet, and she's asked about estimated timescales from EOI to the decision. Now, I think we've partially covered this, but I think it would be good to highlight here the kind of timeline for the project selection panel.
Yeah, that is a good point, actually. For the project selection panel, we're trying to run them on the first Wednesday every month. So we don't have a deadline for this. We just say, right, just get your application ready. You do need to get your quotations in for your procurement side of things, as Matt explained earlier. We will always want the application in 2 weeks before the panels sit, because we have somebody at the University of Winchester who's running their master's programme who will go through it and will outline any strengths, weaknesses, bits that haven't been covered off. We will also then spend a little bit of time during that 2 weeks before the panel preparing you for the panel, so that we'll run through your presentation, give you some advice on the kinds of things that the panel will be looking for, because as Matt said earlier, they are made up of academics, angel investors, business people, so there's going to be a whole variety of questions being fired at you. But yeah, I would say that the first Wednesday in most months is when the panels will be sitting. So a couple of weeks before that is when we need applications to be completed. And in answer to what Kim's saying, I think, as I said earlier, the quickest turnaround so far, or sorry, the average turnaround so far, has been around about 6 or 7 weeks, but that involves work on both sides. Businesses have got to go to the market and see what's available and get some costing, some quotes. And in the meantime, we'll be working on making sure that the project is eligible. We'll also speak to other academics if we need to bring in any expertise. And at the end of the day, it's a clean growth fund that we've got here. So we are looking for carbon reduction. So we've got a very, very good researcher working for Greentech South who will do an analysis of what the project is and outline what the expected carbon reductions could be, all of which will stand you in good stead when you go in front of the panel. The panel itself is not like a dragon's den. We call it the grown-up adult panel. We're not looking to humiliate anybody, so it's there to be supportive. And I think from the last panel, one of our angel investors is looking to invest in one of the companies. So lots of benefits there. I hope I've covered most of them. Gemma, do you have anything to add on that?
I think Gemma might have lost her access to audio, in which case... Oh, you're back, Gemma.
Oh yeah, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself for a minute there. Yeah, I'd say, as Richard was saying earlier, we can't give a definitive timeline of how long it will take from expression of interest to grant funding agreement, but Richard and Matt and the team run really well organised project selection panels where we will run through the process with you, and advice that the panel can provide to you for business ideas going forward. We've had feedback that has been a really useful and productive outcome from those sessions. And I'm sure Richard and Matt will do everything they can, and the team, to make it happen in a timely fashion for you, because we understand how important it is to get these things wrapped up for you as SMEs. So very much interested in that proactive approach to getting things done, as Richard's saying. Yeah, and that's what we're here to provide that support for. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Gemma. That brings us to the end of our quick kind of Q&A session from today. And as both of our speakers have highlighted, there's lots of opportunities. You can reach out to us on our social media, or you can contact us through the business support form, EOI form that's on the website, or email us info@greentechsouth.com, and we'll answer all your questions as quickly as we can. All that remains for me to say today is thank you very much for attending the Low Carbon Solent launch. We're really pleased not to delay the project any further due to COVID-19, and to start to be able to process the R&D grant, postgraduate student projects, and also the challenge-led innovation workshops. One of the kind of final comments that's come through from Selwyn is regarding events and the kind of network that we want to build around the project. And obviously we can't have face-to-face events at the moment. We are hoping to be at Greentech South on the 2nd of October and the Big Green event in the same week as well. But obviously we're keeping a watchful eye on those due to COVID-19 at the moment. But just to reiterate that it's very much a motivation for us to ensure that we can host events, whether they're virtual or in person, that really allow these conversations to flourish.